A major warning has just been sent by the NHL to Matt Rempe, and Matt Rempe is ready to answer the bell for the New York Rangers this season. We're going to get into Matt Rempe's training over the offseason and how he's going to respond to the entire NHL. We're going to break all of that down, but before we do, a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. About 70% of you watching our videos are not actually subscribed to the channel. It's free, so if you want to do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers this season, and it's going to be a very fun and eventful season. And today we're going to be talking about Matt Rempe and a couple other topics, of course, but Matt Rempe being the centerpiece of that, and a couple articles revolving around Matt Rempe and what he brings to the table this season. Obviously, we know what happened last season, but I feel like Matt Rempe might be able to be one of the Rangers' most dynamic players this season. You might think that's crazy, but we'll dive into it and I'll give my thoughts in just a second. Now, just a couple days ago, this was posted by Stan, and I love Stan's articles. They're very funny. If you haven't checked them out, you definitely should. It's a good laugh. It's good, and I love some of the insight he has as well, and he has fun with it, and I love it. So Matt Rempe has now taken the crown as the Rangers' best fighter, and I think there's no debate really with that. I mean, he's been training all offseason with George Laraque, former NHL enforcer who played with, of course, the Montreal Canadiens and the Edmonton Oilers, and split some time with some other teams as well. But obviously training with him, and not only him, but Chris Kreider, and we'll get to that in a second too, this offseason. So I feel like he's going to be one of the most dynamic players on the Rangers this season when he uses all of those skills he worked on this summer and brings it into this season, because he already has the experience of last year and some of the fights he got into, and some were pretty brutal. So we'll get into it. And obviously Stan goes on to say that obviously Rempe owns the longest reach to pound enemies' heads, and also Matty's head is so high it's harder to reach. So obviously the reach thing, right? He's been training with George Laraque. He calls Matt Rempe the skating giraffe, which is hilarious because Matt Rempe, I mean, he has a huge frame and he knows how to use it, right? We saw it last season in certain situations. He's going to be that much better this season as he continues to train with a guy as offensively skilled and gifted as Chris Kreider, and obviously one of the better enforcers in the last 20 years in the NHL in George Laraque. So, he goes on to say, when you think about it, apart from Rempe, there really isn't any Tom Wilson, murderer's row type of guy in the lineup. And please don't tell me it's Jacob Trouba. And it's true, when you look across the NHL, there's not too many guys like that anymore in the sport in general. And I think Matt Rempe, I don't want to say he's brought it back, but I feel like there is an element of that is coming back to the sport. And whether you like it or not, I believe that is happening over the last couple of years. And Matt Rempe is, encapsulating that, and he is that, especially what we saw last season. There was so much hype last season, and you saw it in the intro video at the start of this season, revolving around the game. I remember it was on a Saturday night between the Toronto Maple Leafs and the New York Rangers last season, and there was so much hype around this game because of Matt Rempe and will he fight Ryan Reeves, and that fight ended up happening. We thought it wasn't going to happen. It happened late in the game, but it was worth the wait. And obviously, Matt Rempe doesn't want to be known for just being a fighter, but when he has to, he will answer the bell, and I think that's something the Rangers have been missing. And now if he adds the offensive part of his game, I mean, there's going to be no stopping this player. And there was another article as well, a warning for Matt Rempe, why Matt Rempe should keep his head on a swivel. I believe this was from Stan as well, just a couple weeks ago. And if George Laraque's esteemed pupil still is reading this, beware who you challenge. You can wind up noseless in the MSG infirmary. And this is what I'm talking about. I love Stan's articles. They're really funny, and he just tries to have fun with them. So it's awesome. And, he does have a point. Beware of who you challenge, right? But I think Matt Rempe is moving his way up towards the top of the league in terms of fighters, and that intimidation factor that the Rangers need, that we talked about last year, right? That they were kind of missing in the playoffs. It's more of an intimidation factor. Yes, they can beat you on the scoreboard. We know that. They won the President's Trophy. But when that dries up in the playoffs and the physicality comes out, you're going to need a guy like Matt Rempe who may make a difference in that way. So Matt Rempe also wants to send a message to opposing teams this upcoming season. This, of course, was from Remy, and I thought this was a great article as well. Matt Rempe goes on to say, just be hard to play against, mean, bring an edge, have a great net front presence, make sure the other team always knows that, hey, they're going to have to deal with Matt Rempe every night. And I love that, right? Like, he may not show it in his game yet, just like, Remy says here, but Rempe has potential due to his physical attributes alone, right? Like, this guy is huge. He's 6'8", maybe 6'9" on skates. And obviously we saw it last season, right? That he's going to add more of that intimidation factor, and the fact that he's training with Chris Kreider this offseason. He's trying to be more reliable, right? He's looking at Peter Laviolette and saying, I didn't play that much in the playoffs. I want you to be able to rely on me, to be able to say, okay, not only is this guy, good at fighting, not only can he bring some intimidation factor to the lineup, but he can actually be trusted in a defensive zone face-off situation, stuff like that. He wants to be able to be trusted in certain situations, especially in the playoffs, and we didn't see that last year. So he took the time to train with Chris Kreider this offseason, and, his stats were underwhelming 100% last season, but I think he brings something else to the table that the Rangers are sorely lacking, and we're going to see an entire season of that on full display this year after offseason training. And of course, his confidence continues to build, which is another thing that obviously not too many people are talking about as well. Like, he has an entire he had some of that experience last year. He has some playoff experience. What can he bring into this season that may be different that we haven't seen? That's going to be exciting to see. And when you look at this year's lineup, I mean, there's still a lot up in the air. Like, I still feel with Kaapo Kakko, maybe there is potential for him to see time in the top six. And I've, been vocal about it in previous videos that maybe you don't touch that second line, but maybe Kaapo Kakko ends up on the first line and, they play with Riley Smith on the third line or something. They'll figure it out as the season starts and who's gelling with who. But Matt Rempe is very useful now on that fourth line. Like, there is some identity there, and we know what Sam Carrick's going to bring as well. Jimmy Vesey does have some offensive upside, but, even if Will Cooley moves down, let's say, I like what I saw from Will Cooley in the playoffs as well. He was fast. He was getting in on the forecheck. He was being physical. I did like seeing that. So, the Rangers' fourth line might have some identity now, away from the start of last season into this season. I think that's really important for Cup championship teams that win the Stanley Cup. We saw with the Florida Panthers. They have an identity all throughout their entire lineup. So Matt Rempe is going to be instrumental this year in adding that to the lineup. And we'll get into a quote here from Matt Rempe on the offseason, of course, heading into this year and what he wants to bring to the table. And just be hard to play against. Bring an edge, have a great net front presence, make sure the other team always knows what is happening, which is Matt Rempe is stapling himself to their goaltender. He is going to be in the crease, is going to be mixing things up. And that, of course, is from Greg Wyshynski of ESPN, who did an interview with Matt Rempe. And the last thing I will point out is this is from Brian Sutter, obviously used to play in the NHL long time ago, and this was from Stan's article, and he says that fighting was something that had to be done. It wasn't so much that I had to prove how tough I was, but that as a team, we had to stand up to that type of opposition, and I always figured I was the guy to do it. And of course, that was Brian Sutter, and I think you can apply some of this, and that's why Stan put it in his article, that you can apply some of this to Matt Rempe. It's not about that he has to prove that he's tough. We've seen him in the NHL now. It's not about that. It's the team dynamic, and now the Rangers have a guy like that that can kind of rally the troops if need be in certain situations. So it's going to be a very interesting season. Let me know in the comments what you think of Matt Rempe heading into this season. I think he's going to be one of the Rangers' more interesting players this year. He's going to be very dynamic if everything comes together and everything he's been working on comes together. I'm excited to see what he looks like this season and how different it is from last season. But let me know what you think in the comments. And if you haven't yet, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything New York Rangers.